Alex from Dicebreaker, and this is Tapestry, a civilization building game by Jamie Stegmaier for 1 to 5 players. A highly anticipated and much talked about game, we're going to take a look behind that hefty $100 price tag and see if it's really worth all the hype and the big old price tag attached to it. Despite its incredibly simple rule set, the rulebook is all of 4 pages, there are a number of different routes to victory. A big factor of deciding which one of these routes to take often comes from the civilization card you receive at the beginning of the game. On your turn, you can decide between moving on one of the 4 advancement tracks or taking income and thereby moving into a new era. Exploration, amongst other things, will give and allow you to lay land tiles, of which you potentially get resources if there's one shown on the tile, and victory points if you line up the terrain with terrain of the same type. This works well in conjunction with military track, which allows you to conquer these new lands and even potentially get in tiffs with your neighbours. Each time you conquer, you roll the conquer dice and can choose which one of the 2 options to take, forcing you to decide between straight up victory points, which are great in the long term, or resources, which might allow you to perform more actions in the short term. Science is an interesting track in that it mostly allows you to move further ahead on the other tracks, not receiving the actual benefit associated with it at the beginning, but further down the line granting you those too, essentially allowing you to progress on multiple tracks at the same time. The technology track will allow you to invent things like irrigation or time travel, which will give you victory points, resources, buildings, and other benefits when you upgrade them. Each track has a unique set of buildings which you can gain along the way too. Every time you gain one, you can place it on your capital city card. Play strategically, and this little card can gain you some handy bonuses. If you fill in one of the grids, it will reward you with a resource of your choice. Fill in a row or column, however, and you'll be showered with victory points. You'll mostly be doing this with income buildings, but you can also use bigger landmarks. Landmarks are earned by getting to certain key points on the advancement tracks before other players. The buildings themselves don't do anything special, but they do take up a large area on the card, which is handy if you're going for resources or victory points. Every player's capital city card is unique, with different areas of impassable land, adding a nice little puzzle element. Once you're ready to move on to the next era, maybe you've run out of resources and just can't do anything, maybe you just don't fancy your options and want to move on, or maybe you even have a tapestry card that could spice up your next round. Once you're ready to move on, you can decide to collect income. At this point, you get to look at your civilization card and see if there's any special abilities that set in. Perhaps you're gaining resources, victory points, or other benefits. Then, you can play your tapestry card on your income mat. Tapestry cards have special abilities that set in as and when you play them, or will last throughout the whole of the next round. Maybe you're a steam tycoon and get to invent a new technology and upgrade it, associating the benefit with the upgrade. Or perhaps you're terraforming and can now place buildings on those impassable bits of land on your capital city card, gaining you 5 victory points every time you do so. Tapestry cards can be a bit hit and miss, to be honest. If you're lucky, they will line up with your civilization objective perfectly, and you get to feel all smug about it. Usually, they don't really work like that though. While there are about 50 tapestry cards in the game, you only ever get to play around 3 or 4 of them throughout, which seems like a pity, seeing as they're a very exciting part of the game. And yet, it feels like you just don't get enough of a chance to play them throughout, which seems odd, considering they are the namesake of the game. During the income phase, you can upgrade one tech card of your choice and gain the benefits shown. Once again, benefits vary from resources, victory points, buildings, and more. You also gain victory points based on the spaces uncovered by the little buildings on your income mat. This one will reward you for filling up rows and columns in your capital city. This one rewards you for taking an aggressive conquering route, and this one rewards you for your innovative and pioneering ways by giving you victory points for each invention you have. The fun of the game really comes in finding the many different paths to victory. There's so much to be discovered in this game, from the civilization cards that come with their varying abilities to the advancement tracks with their different benefits. I've gone a whole game before completely ignoring the science track. Was this a bad thing? Yes, probably. The person who entirely focused on that actually ended up winning the game. And I'm not bitter about it, I swear. Quite the opposite, in fact. I enjoy this game more and more with every time I play it. So much so that I'm actually excited to think about the next time I'm going to play it, because I'm already thinking about the different tactics I'm going to try. I enjoy the design of the game overall too, from the box itself that I could hang on my wall if it weren't so bloody heavy, to the individual cards designed by Andrew Bosley, to the board, although super simple, is incredibly aesthetically pleasing. Thumbs up for yet another beautifully designed game by Stonemaier Games. And look at these super cute, teeny tiny little buildings. I love the attention to detail in this game, and I get really excited every time I get to place one of these.
No. Stop. Out. Go. Look, you can like the game all you want, but I have to talk about these stupid buildings because I hate these buildings, all right? It's all well and good that you get your nice little bonus off your income track until you actually have to place them somewhere. And that's when we get to these capital city boards. Whilst you'll get a couple of options to pick from at the start of the game, all of these capital cities are essentially the same. They just have a slightly different layout of these little red dots on the board, which are essentially just slots that have already been filled. Now, what these are supposed to be are places for you to put your little buildings on. And almost like a cool little Tetris game, you'll be filling up the slots. And if you manage to fill an entire row, then you'll get bonus points every round. However, what actually happens is instead of trying to fill a tight little puzzle where you're cramming buildings into perfect little spots to try and get the most out of what you've got, you're actually just playing a really naff bingo card that is incredibly lackluster. Filling up a row on one of these cards takes absolutely ages. And even when you manage to get an entire one filled, by the end of the game, the max that you'll score per row is 3 points per round, which in a game where you'll be accumulating hundreds of points by the end is pretty uninviting. So what about the larger buildings in the box, the landmarks, the huge hunks of plastic that come with Tapestry, and probably the thing that you first saw if you ever heard about Tapestry in the past? Well, whenever you pass a certain track's milestone on the board, for example, if you go past the first 3 spaces on any of them, you'll unlock a certain building which you'll get to put in your capital city. If you're a militarist, you might unlock things like a barracks or a tank factory. If you're a scientist, you might unlock laboratories and academies, or if you're explorers, then you may go through the stars in your very own space shuttle. When you first see these buildings in the box, you'll be bubbling with excitement trying to figure out what special powers they'll unlock for you. Maybe they'll unlock special technologies or allow you to do incredible things that no other player around the board will be able to because you're the first one to build them. Well, until you actually build them, that is, and you figure out that the only thing that these buildings actually contribute is to fill up slots on your rubbish little bingo card. These massive, chunky, and probably pretty expensive lumps of plastic are relegated to the rubbish capital city board that just sits next to your player income track. In fact, I can't think of a better metaphor for how I feel about them than the actual purpose that they serve in the game. You stumble across them when you're trying to focus on something more important, and then you realize that all they do is take up space. Unfortunately, you don't score any points for taking up all the space in the game box, though. I feel mean focusing so hard on these things, but just to put this in context, this game costs $100. That's a lot of money, and I can bet a significant portion of that was spent on these plastic miniatures, which, and batten down the hatches now because I'm about to deliver a pretty spicy take, don't even look very nice. I don't know why everyone's so obsessed with them. I think they look really rubbish. And that's going to bring me on to another problem that I have with this game, and that is the theme. Don't let the hex map and the military track fool you, though. This is a Eurogame at its heart. Admittedly, it's a pretty interesting puzzle of resource management and economic growth, but Eurogames have always had an issue when it comes to tying together their theme and their mechanics. This serves as a pretty good example of that. By the end of the game, if you've gone with a building-heavy playstyle, your capital city will look like a sloppy mishmash of different colours and differently proportioned buildings from about 4 different historical periods with about 4 different architectural styles, all surrounded by these tiny little colourful wooden huts. And none of it will mean anything. You could have a nuclear fusion reactor next to your lighthouse be completely surrounded by sheds, and it just has no bearing on what the game actually does. Whilst the promise of Tapestry puts you in the mood to be building a grand civilization that stands unique from all the other players around the board, in actuality you'll find yourself doing pretty much the exact same actions, just in a different order, building a city that functionally is exactly the same as everyone else's. The 4 tracks do make for some pretty interesting decisions. However, once you've set on a direction at the start of the game, you're pretty much pulled in that direction for the rest of it. I often found that the decisions that I needed to make on my turn had already pretty much been made for me, and Tapestry rewards players who just lock into a certain path and then just supplement it with a few extra bits from the others every now and again. Tapestry seems to demand specialization from you as well. We played one game and I watched the player to my left try and dip his toes a little bit in all of the tracks available. I'll do a little bit of science and a little bit of military and a little bit of exploration. His score completely suffered for it. And it was really, really sad to just watch him not enjoy the game because of it. I feel like Tapestry just wants you to force yourself on one track and only ever pay a small bit of attention to the rest of them. And I think that's really dull. And another thing...
Hello! The player who is to your left here, and I too have some opinions about Tapestry that I want to share with everyone. Please leave. See, I really quite like Tapestry. Wheels is absolutely correct in saying there's a lot of Eurogame packed inside its bulky, pretty box, but then I quite like a Eurogame. I mean, just look at Scythe, the previous game designed by Jamie Stegmaier. You can talk about animal companions and big walking mechs all you really like, but let's not kid ourselves. This is one big Eurogame with a few combat elements thrown on top. And you know what? I bloody love it. That type of game is what Jamie Stegmaier really excels at designing, and true to form, Tapestry scratches a very similar itch. Flipping between all the different actions as you try and get a bit of an engine going and nudge your progress that little bit further ahead of your opponents feels very familiar and also very satisfying. Admittedly, there's a lot of iconography to get to grips with, but once you get your head around it, you'll find yourself spinning a whole bunch of plates at once, and that makes you feel very capable. There's also some really nice pace setting going on, because a game of Tapestry doesn't end until all players have proceeded to their final era and taken one last round of income. Players are completely free to roar ahead into their next era, either because they want to advance and gain some new benefit for themselves, or more likely, they've just run out of actions, but the other players are under no obligation to advance their own era until they're good and ready. While there are benefits to racing up the tracks well ahead of the other players, you also don't have to keep up, or worry about losing turns because the game has suddenly and abruptly ended. The inverse of this, of course, is if players finish all of their eras well in advance of the others, they could be spending quite a long time twiddling their thumbs and waiting for the game to finish. Although in fairness, more fool them for racing ahead, frankly. All in all then, I found Tapestry to be quite a pleasant and sedate experience. It's a lot more abstract than Scythe, but it's also less directly adversarial, which was quite nice, and there is a really good deal of replayability here thanks to all of the Tapestry cards and the sheer number of different civilizations. That said, I do worry a bit about balance in this game. During my playtime, some civilizations seemed considerably more powerful than others, and it was difficult to try and negate their advantages and close up the gap in those instances whereby one civilization roared ahead of the others. The Futurist civilization, for example, starts that player 4 spaces up every single track. Admittedly, they don't get the benefits for landing on those spaces along the way, but nonetheless, that is a massive lead, and if you're dealt a duff civilization, it's practically unassailable, which makes it really hard for you to get your foot on the ladder and actually get things going. With so many different civilizations and Tapestry cards on offer, we simply weren't able to play this game enough times to say definitively whether it's really well balanced or not. But if I had to put money on it, I have a sneaking suspicion every now and then you'll get a game with some disappointing civilization combinations. That said, I guess once you've played the game enough times to be familiar with the vast majority, you can probably swap them out if you think you're in for a crap time. So Alex feels really positively about Tapestry, and Wheels kind of has a bee in his bonnet about it. I think I land somewhere in the middle. For me, Tapestry is a really interesting and diverse game that sets a good pace and rewards you for thinking strategically. The landscape of each game also changes frequently, which means the best course of action can change at a moment's notice, and that too is pretty good fun. However, as I've said, I do have some lingering doubts about the balance in this game, and to be honest with you, I just keep coming back to that price point. Tapestry is an undeniably expensive game, and while the assets are lovely, for me I just don't think they quite justify the expense. Tapestry is a really fun and interesting game, and I'm eager to play it again, but I'm not sure I'd recommend it without one or two caveats. But hey, that's just me, so what about you? Which of the 3 opinions you've heard in this review hews closely to what you think? Are you interested in Tapestry, or will you be giving it a miss? Please do let us know in the comments below. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, there are loads more from Dicebreaker for you to watch. Some of them should be on screen now, along with our lovely circular subscribe bezel. Make sure you ring the bell icon so you don't miss anything else from us. But most importantly, thank you very much for watching, and have a lovely day.